Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. This week on Semi-Serious, I want to talk about the Me Too movement. As usual, I'd like to start by defining our terms. So for this we go to Wikipedia, and Wikipedia defines Me Too, or hashtag Me Too, as a two-word hashtag used on social media to help demonstrate the widespread prevalence of sexual assault and harassment, especially in the workplace. That's a pretty dry definition, which is fine because that means that I can add to it. What Wikipedia doesn't mention is the momentum that hashtag MeToo and the Me Too movement has gained since it first started after the Harvey Weinstein scandal back in October of 2017. It also doesn't specify gender, but it's worth mentioning that despite what you may think thanks to lots of social bias, the sexual assault and harassment that Me Too seeks to stop affects both men and women, though it's still true that most sexual assault occurs at the hands of men. Quick side note / disclaimer. I don't believe that this means that men are bad or evil or that they can't control themselves when it comes to sex, because sexual assault and harassment are not actually about sex at all. They're about power. I think we've all been conditioned to accept the damaging structures that patriarchy teaches, from unrealistic beauty standards to literally inhuman repressions of emotion. Sexual violence is a symptom of a larger problem, and that problem is, well, it's a lot of different things, but to put it very simply, patriarchy. The Weinstein scandal seemingly sparked a landslide of sexual misconduct allegations that seemed to leave the world reeling and confused. It seemed that in every industry and all across the world, people were coming together to share their stories and also to support one another. Finally, the deeply established cult of patriarchal hegemony and insidious misogyny was seemingly dismantled. It felt empowering, shocking, liberating, and a little chaotic when Me Too movement first started happening. And I remember also feeling a little bit nauseated as I was scrolling through my Facebook feed and seeing friend after friend after friend share their Me Too stories, or even just the hashtag. Yeah, we were all united, but at what cost? Of course, as with any grassroots movement, it did not take long for the backlash to happen. But the thing that was interesting to me was how the uncertainty that mostly men were expressing about the future of male-female relations, especially in the workplace, further emphasized the disconnect between how American men and women are taught to interact with each other. Women learn defense. Men don't have to. Of course men were confused and uncertain. It was never culturally imperative for them to learn how to behave since they had always occupied positions of relative social power. We can debate this in the comments if you like, but before we do, I would definitely recommend reading up on some feminist literature or cultural theory, because these conversations and discussions have happened a lot in the past, and honestly probably by people who are much more eloquent than I am and who have their thoughts a little bit better in their head than I do. And honestly, it probably would have done me some good to read up on some differing opinions as well, because it actually surprised me to learn that there were some women who were kind of side-eyeing the Me Too movement as being threatening equality or reducing women to white dove, frail, pre-19th century damsels in distress in need of protecting and saving. Sure, the argument sounds empowering enough, but it completely misses the point of the movement, which, if we go back to our definition, is to demonstrate the widespread prevalence of sexual assault and harassment. Personally, I'm all about women standing up for themselves, speaking out, and generally reclaiming their powerful selves, but I don't think that there's any reason to assume that the Me Too movement doesn't make room for exactly that. Language has a lot of power, and speaking your truth is one of the most powerful things that you can possibly do. Also, I'd like to point out that the Me Too movement isn't suggesting that women not stand up for themselves in harassing or uncomfortable or downright violent situations in or out of the workplace. What it's arguing is that women shouldn't have to. I'm a firm believer in doing hard things and challenging yourself to go outside of your comfort zone, and I believe that regardless of what career path you choose, you will inevitably encounter people who are challenging to work with or who you disagree with and you have to figure out how to compromise with. But there is a line between a challenging colleague and someone enduring sexual assault or sexual harassment in order to keep their job. And that is what Me Too seeks to call out and ultimately, I think, to rectify. So one of the things that had a major impact on me recently was the Larry Nassar case. In case you missed it, Larry Nassar was the team doctor for the USA gymnastics team and was also an osteopathic physician at at Michigan State University. He sexually abused at least 265 women and girls during his tenure and is considered a serial child molester. He recently pled guilty and was sentenced to 40 to 175 years. But what was particularly impactful for me about this case was not the man himself, but the fact that the judge during the sentencing, who was awesome, allowed his victims to testify and to confront him in court, and more than 150 women chose to share their stories and thereby negate or refute their anonymity. It was heartbreaking and incredibly powerful, and basically to me epitomized what Me Too means. These women had endured abuse, some of them in the presence of their parents, for years. For years. They had doubted themselves, they had tried to bring attention to the problem, they had been silenced for years. Finally, they were able to find justice, and for many of them, I think their justice came in the act of speaking their truth to their assailant. The judge officially sentenced him, but each woman who shared her story also sentenced him to live with his guilt, if he felt any, if he's capable of feeling that, for the rest of his life. Many of the stories shared a common factor though, which is that they faced an indomitable and unexpected force that they had to contend with, even beyond Nassar's abuse of them, the enablers. Many women and girls reported their abuse over the years and were met with either platitudes or excuses or silence. This is an aspect of the case that honestly made me so angry, but was also so significant and was so symptomatic of what is wrong with the society, because otherwise, without these enablers, how could Larry Nassar have continued to hurt so many people? The current systems of handling sexual misconduct are woefully inadequate, and partially because they place the onus of responsibility on the victim rather than on the perpetrator. And another side note, this is where another criticism of Me Too usually occurs, which argues that it seeks to flip the justice standard to guilty until proven innocent. And I want to be clear that that is not what I am arguing for. I don't want witch hunts. I understand that though vastly outnumbered by real and ignored accusations, false accusations do happen. On the other hand, I want people who come forward to speak about their experience to be believed rather than silenced, regardless of how many of them choose to share their story. I think that the Me Too movement relies a lot on the strength of its numbers, but I also think that one instance of sexual harassment or abuse or sexual misconduct is one too many. It's a very complex issue and one that I don't have a straightforward answer to right now, but I believe that we can figure one out together now that the conversation is happening publicly. Last but certainly not least, I want to talk about a small, maybe irrelevant criticism that I have of the Me Too movement. A criticism? Yes, it's true. I have them sometimes. And that is its erasure of people who choose to keep their story to themselves. I do believe that sharing your story is a choice, and I'm a huge advocate for it personally, but I also recognize that that's not something that is right for everyone. Way back in May of 2016, the New York Times published an article called "The Forced Heroism of the Survivor," which I loved so much that I bookmarked it, I kept it forever and ever and ever, and I also linked it in the description box below for you so you can read it for yourselves. It discusses the semantic shift from calling men and women who experience sexual abuse victims to survivors, and how that language shift also signaled an ideological shift that valued strength and resilience and stability and aggression over pity or vulnerability or feeling damaged. The article draws on cross-cultural references from Jessica Jones to Kimmy Schmidt to Priya, an Indian comic book hero, to highlight what it sees as the terror of facing your vulnerability, a treasonous thought in a society that is desperately optimistic and dedicated to recovery narratives. But even the Times itself seems to need a reminder of that, as it highlighted Rachel Denhollander as the sort of Imperator Furiosa figure who raised an army with her single voice, despite the fact that her story also involves significant amounts of pain, loneliness, and the lingering, unvoiced personal regret that's hard to reconcile with this image of a battle-worn general leading her troops full of righteous anger into battle against a universally accepted antagonist. Once again, yeah, she's strong and willing to fight, but at what cost? And that leads me to my last and possibly most important point. Your story is your own. You don't owe anyone your story. You are in control of it. You get to decide where or when or how you choose to share it, if you choose to share it at all, because you don't have to. You are in control. You don't owe anyone your story. You do not owe anyone your story. Anger is a hard thing to sustain, but it's necessary if you choose to fight. The truth is that sometimes every single person who has experienced trauma feels like giving up because it's that hard. Every single one of them thinks at a certain point, this is too hard and I can't do this. It's too much for me. I can't carry this burden. But I'm here to tell you that even without sharing your story, you don't have to shoulder that burden alone. When it comes to the path through healing and recovery, for many of the people to whom things happen, as Virginia Woolf termed people who have experienced trauma, healing is an ungainly, messy, vulnerable, unglamorous, unbeautiful, just incredibly difficult journey. It's angry, it's sad, it's all of these emotions, and sometimes it's dark humor, and sometimes it's irony, and sometimes it's just feeling broken. Sometimes it's feeling broken. It is a monumentally human task to heal from trauma. It's full of peaks and valleys, and it moves forward and backward and in cycles. It's riddled with moments of doubt and regret, and it's exhausting, but it's worth it. It is worth it. And I can tell you that from where I sit, which is just shy of 7 years away from my own trauma, my own experiences with enablers, and my own Me Too moment. It's not easy, but it's worth it. It's not easy, but you can do it. We'll be doing it together. We'll be doing it imperfectly, but it's worth it, and we can do it. We're gonna do it. And on that happy note, actually, you know what? I think it is happy, because even though bad shit happens in life, we have each other. And that's how we get better, is we have each other, and we talk with each other, and we lean on each other, and we're better because of each other. Tune in next week for another essay. Just kidding. But if you do, seriously though, if you like my content, then please do subscribe, leave a like, because I put out new content every week. And yeah. The last couple weeks have been kind of heavy, so maybe next week we'll do something silly. I don't know, we'll see. Leave a comment below about your thoughts on the Me Too movement, or if there is a video idea that you have that you'd like to see me try to do. That'd be great. As always, guys, just remember that you're not alone. Remember that you're way stronger than you think you are. Keep being the love that you wish to see in the world, and I will see you next time. Until next time, guys.